Welcome back, everybody. We got a couple of bundles of pennies fresh from the bank, and so we are going to have ourselves a good old-fashioned penny hunt. Hi, everybody. This is James here. You're watching my channel, CAD Roll Hunter. That's right. I got a couple bundles of pennies here, and nothing crazy on the enders, but I can see these plastic wrappers have a lot of older copper, which is great, of course, because we want to find some older stuff. But I am interested because we've got a bunch of rolls that have some newer pennies. You can see a 2006 there. And there are lots of varieties to look for, 2003, 2006, 2007, that we want to see some rarer varieties. And in here, again, some newer stuff there. And in here, one thing I noticed is that this roll here is kind of wonky. I think there's a coin in here diagonally, and that means we might be a few pennies short. It also might mean that there's something bigger stuffed in here than could otherwise fit if it wasn't on an angle. Well, we'll find out soon enough. And there's one that looks like a really nice BU cent there, so interested to see what's in that roll. But we're going to get started over here. We've got the copper cup. We can expect a lot of copper. Everything from 96 and earlier in Canadian pennies is all copper. So let's get into it. Very first coin, roll number one, we have a 1965. And one of the things we're looking for as we scope it is the pointed 5. And this, of course, is the blunt 5. It is not quite on a 45-degree angle, which we'd see on the pointed 5, but that's one of the things we always want to look for. And we're off to a great start because just a few coins back, we've got our first 1962. And there is Queen Elizabeth, the laureate portrait. So that's the first find for the board. So we'll get it down. We'll hope that's a really favorable start. We're telling that there might be some other friends in here. And right next, we've got a 1985, and that's another thing we want to scope. This looks like the blunt 5 here. And it sure is. That 5 is pretty much straight up and down. And the rare coin we're looking for is the pointed 5. And a little further back, we have a 1961, so another laureate portrait here. And it's got some corrosion and stuff, but that's a 60s, early 60s coin for the board. Same roll and a little further back, and we're going to have our first 50s penny. And this is a 1955 with Queen Elizabeth. Still in roll number one, and here we've got our first 1964. And a pretty nice looking 1980 behind it there. It's not exactly worth keeping, and so it's destined for the copper cup. You can see it's got some pretty serious corrosion there. But on the reverse, looked for a moment like it still had a lot of its luster. And just getting to the end of that roll, and we've got ourselves a laureate portrait that still has a lot of red on it here. This one is a 1964. No surprise there. This is a pretty common year, but that's a pretty nice looking 64. Just opening up roll number two, and we've got an imposter in here right by my finger. It looks like we've got a dime, and it looks old, but I think it could just be a US dime with a copper edge. So, and sure enough, that's exactly what it is. So we'll take a look, and it is a 1970D. I'll set that aside, the first dime of this penny hunt, and I'll see if I need this in my own collection. But we're up 9 cents. Whatever we find in here, we're doing pretty well. So now just the start of that second roll, and look at the toning on this 1972. It looks really cool, very dark. Doesn't even have a lot of circulation wear to it, so I'm not sure exactly what happened, but really interesting toning. I'm going to set that aside just as an interesting find. Same roll, we got our first 1967 commemorative here with the rock dove on it. So, of course, we want to see if there is any doubling on the date or on Canada, and I don't see it. And then we'll check it to see if there's doubling on Regina, which I don't see. That's another thing. We found a bunch of them in the past, but I don't think we got it here. It almost looks like there's a little something on that E, but the doubling that we would normally see, we should be able to see across all of the letters, and I don't really see that. Still in the second roll, and we found ourselves another oldie here. This time it's a 1956. So that's a good one for the board. And I just see a couple coins back. We've got another, our first American penny, our first American pennies. This one is 1980, so that one is a copper cent. And this next one as well. a 1966, so that is also copper as well. And behind that, a really nice looking 1975. And we're going to have our very first King George VI of the hunt in this roll. So we're just in roll number 2, but there is a 1951, and there is our buddy George VI. So that's great. And we found another older Elizabeth just behind there too. There is a 1958. And if I flip it over, we'll see that laureate portrait there too. And we're going to have at least one more find in this roll because here is another laureate portrait. This one is another 1958. Still in roll number 3, and we found ourselves a really nice looking diadem portrait. Let's just take a peek and see what this one is. It's a 1978. That is just gleaming. We'll check it to see if it's got any of the doubling under the date. And it doesn't, but that's still a really nice looking 1978. I just picked out another US coin. It's a Lincoln Memorial, and I just flipped it over to find that it is a first year Lincoln Memorial in 1959. I'll set that aside. It's our oldest Lincoln cent. It's 1 year off of being a wheat cent, which of course we hope we might find here. But that's great. I'm going to set that aside. It actually looks like it's in pretty good condition for a 1959. It's not red by any stretch, but it doesn't have a lot of wear marks on it, so that's really cool. Just getting towards the end of roll number 3, and we've got another Elizabeth here. It is a 1963. In roll number 4, and we found ourselves a 2012. This is not necessarily rare, but what it is the last circulating penny that the Royal Canadian Mint produced. They in fact produced 2 varieties. One is copper-plated zinc, that is not magnetic, and copper-plated steel, which is magnetic. And so we can always check which this is by using our handy-dandy magnet. This is zinc, of course. It's not magnetic. But that is just the last penny that was issued in Canada. So we've been finding a lot of newer pennies in roll number 4, but we've got an older one right here with this laureate portrait. And this one's a 1957, and this is actually in pretty good shape. It is, it's not exactly red, but it doesn't have a lot of circulation. It's got a few little scratches, but there's still a bit of brightness on this side. So that's really cool. There are a bunch of cents that I'm looking for my collection. I got a 2010 here, and most of them are made of zinc, but they did make some steel 2010s that would be magnetic that were only issued in sets. And of course, sometimes those sets make their way out into the wild. So that's why I'm always checking my 2010s with the magnet to see if I've got the magnetic one, which is much less common. Okay, we're just getting to roll number 5, and we've got a 2003 here, and this is an interesting year because this is a transition year. The Mint was transitioning between the old effigy, this crowned portrait of the Queen here, and the new effigy. And you can see that this new effigy carries the P composition mark. It means it's steel. So in 2003, they made old effigy and new effigy, and they also made them out of zinc and steel. And there is one in particular that is very rare, and that is the old effigy with the P composition mark, which is supposed to indicate it's made of steel, but it's not magnetic, meaning it was accidentally struck on a zinc planchet. That's what we're looking for. We don't have it here, so what we're looking for is the old effigy with the P composition mark, and we want to check those with the magnet and see if it's magnetic or not. If it's not, we've got the rare 2003. I have never found one, but I know of people who have, so it's something we just want to be checking for. I'm in the same roll, and I've just found a couple of 2006s back to back, and 2006 is another really interesting year because there are versions of the 2006 with this newer portrait that have the Royal Canadian Mint mark. There are versions that have a P composition mark. That's a rare one we want to find, and ones with nothing below the Queen's bust. And there are some that are made of steel and some that are made of zinc. One of the rare ones we want to find is the 2006 P. That one is minted at just over 200,000, so it's not common at all, but it's attainable. Like, they're out there and you can find it. Another version is the 2006 with no mint mark and no P, but that is magnetic, so it's made of steel. It's also extremely uncommon, but it exists as well. And right in the middle of this roll of newer pennies, we found ourselves another George VI. It's a 1950, and there he is. And that's one of the reasons I love hunting pennies, because pennies are not actually circulating in Canada. So what it means is somebody has wrapped up the pennies they've had in their piggy bank or in a jar, and finally, after almost 10 years of not circulating, taking them into the bank. And so you never know what you're going to get. That's why we tend to get lots of older pennies, interesting things, because it's just what people have had in their piggy bank. And so that's great. So 1950, King George VI in the roll. And while we're at it, here's a 2007, and there is a low mintage variety. So the 2007 is minted in both steel and zinc, and they both feature the Royal Canadian Mint logo. But the zinc non-magnetic version is minted at just about 9 million, which is significantly less than other pennies, which might have hundreds of millions minted. Same roll, and we have found ourselves another first year Lincoln Memorial, a 1959 Denver, and it's looking pretty beat up, but we have the set, the Philadelphia and the Denver. Just cracked into roll number 8, and the third coin in is another King George VI, and this time it is a 1943. That's our oldest of the hunt. Roll number 10, and these last number of rolls have skewed newer for sure, but we found ourselves another laureate portrait, 1964. And about halfway through that roll, we found another one. This time it's a 1962. 10 rolls hunted, we're at the halfway point, and we've been pretty even with copper and Canadian steel and zinc pennies. There's our finds. Those are all going to be copper there, but we've got a bunch of American zinc cent rejects as well. So it's been pretty even, and it looks like it might be that way in these rolls here, but we'll find out in just a sec. I've just laid down row 12, and I can see a few things here. First of all, we can see that we've got an older one here. This is a Elizabeth laureate portrait. It's a 1962, but we can also see a bunch of American edges. We found a bunch of US coins in here, but it looks like a good chunk of this roll might be Americans, which isn't unusual or unexpected in Canadian penny rolls. I'll only pull you in if we find something interesting like a Wheatie, though. Same roll and a little further in. We got ourselves another Elizabeth, this one, another 64. Roll 13, and we found another nice laureate portrait here. This one is a 57 with a lot of mint luster on it still. Look at that. That's a gorgeous coin. That is a nice one. One thing we can look for on these 50s and 60s coins is the hanging, in this case, the hanging 7. And we found a bunch or several in our last hunt, but it's a die clash of the queen's neck from the other side of the coin that would show it, make it appear as though the 7 is hanging. We don't have that here, but that's another thing we can look for on a lot of our 40s, 50s, and 60s. It's just that the worse the coin is for wear, the harder that is to see. But this is got enough luster, we would easily be able to see it on this one. Roll number 14, I've got a 1969. I've put it under the scope to look for any doubling, and we have found the double 9 variety. I'm just going to move it a little bit here. What you can see is all along the base of the 9, there's some doubling there. It's really a die deterioration. It's not a double die or anything like that, but it's an interesting variation. It's the first I found there is doubling you can find in the 78s, the 79s, some 70s, some 76s, the 69. This is the first out of all of those that I've scoped where we've seen any real doubling present. So we'll set that aside as an interesting find. A little further down, and we found another laureate portrait, Elizabeth, in 1960. And I think this is our first 1960 of the hunt. Nothing yet in roll 15 until we came across this one here, a 1963. I've got a US 1995 under the scope. This is a year where there are some double die obverses and reverses. And I pulled this one under, was taking a peek at it, and just wanted to show you this here. Just some odd stuff happening on Liberty. It almost looks like there's something. It could be die deterioration or machine doubling. Looks like you can see a shadow of the L pretty significantly there, and then the I and the B. Let me know what you think that is. I don't think it's the double die. It doesn't look like any of the ones I could see on Variety Vista. There's a few odd things happening on here too. At the bottom of O and E on one. Some odd stuff, but doesn't appear to be one of the double dies. Let me know what you think that is. It's probably machine doubling or some kind of die deterioration, but tell me what you think. Same row just towards the end, we got ourselves another 1961. I've got roll 16 here, and this has like a beautiful BU scent in there. So I'm not sure what we will find. If there's going to be any friends in there, we'll see which one this is. Maybe we'll find some beauties. Well, it doesn't quite look like we're going to have a whole roll of BU scents, but there might be a few in here. So let's take a look at this ender and see what we've got. That is a really gorgeous looking 1979. We'll definitely scope that one to see if we've got any doubling. And we don't, but that's probably one to keep. And a little further back, yeah, look at that. We've got a really dingy 1965. I'll check that one. But there's a beautiful 1980. And what do we got here? A beautiful 1982. So we'll take a look. We'll keep on looking and see what else we might find in this roll. Partway through that roll, we got ourselves another oldie. This time, it's another 1964. And a little further back, looks like we might have another couple nice ones here. Got another 78. And this one is an 81. Getting towards the end, obverse facing, this one is another 61. That's our third 61 of the hunt. I've just opened up roll number 17. And it looks like we're going to have a few nice ones in here as well. There's a really nice looking 1979 with another one right behind it. We can quickly scope that and see if we've got any doubling on the 9. We don't there. We'll grab the next one and we'll see if that one does. And we don't there, but they're two pretty nice looking 1979s. And we're going to find some older Elizabeths in this roll too. This one here is another 1962. Same roll, and we found another 1969 double 9. It's not really severe, but you can see that sort of doubling all along the rim of the 9 there. That's what you're looking for the double 9 in the 1969. Still in the same roll, looks like we might have a couple things because I see this. Well, we got a really nice 1979 and as well as this 1964 laureate portrait, if it will ever focus. There we go. And just a couple coins back, there is another laureate 1962 to add to the board. And just behind it, it looks like we've got a pretty decent looking 1976 here. All right, roll number 18 is that really wonky one where you can see there's something going on here. I'm going to open it up and see if I can figure out what is happening. Well, there they all are. I counted them and there were actually 50 of them, so we weren't short. They were just stuffed in awkwardly. And so I'll let you know if we find anything interesting in this roll. Well, I've got a US penny here. It's a 1995D, and I wondered at first if it was some sort of an error because you can see that it's got some different coloration, but when I look at the damage on the word trust there, it looks like this has been treated in some sort of chemical that has actually stripped away part of the copper layer and so has exposed the zinc core. I think that's what's happened. If I flip it over and lose it, we can kind of see the same kind of damage and the same kind of discoloration. It's different and interesting. I don't think it's an error. I think it is really just some kind of damage. Roll number 19, and we are going to have us a wheat scent. It didn't look like we were going to find one, but we've got one here, and it looks pretty grungy. It is a 1952 S, I think. Let me just put that under the scope and confirm that. It is definitely an S mint mark on there. I don't think I have that. It's not in the best of shape, that's for sure. But I will never complain about finding a wheatie in our Canadian rolls, particularly a S mint mark that we don't see very often. That's awesome. So that's a great one for the board. Well, we're in the last roll, roll 20. We're just getting towards the end, but we've found ourselves a 2009 US penny. And it is the formative years. There is Lincoln reading a book on a log, it appears. If I flip it over, it's the 2009 Philadelphia. Okay, well, that hunt is completed. Another 20 rolls down, and it was a fun hunt. We were pretty much a little over half was copper. So we found a lot of newer scents this time around, which was good to go through and see if we found any of those varieties. We didn't find any foreigns outside of Americans, but we did find a fair number of copper US cents. We found that dime, so we're up a little bit. Of the interesting American finds, we've got that 2009 formative years. We got a really nice 1975 and that kind of odd looking 95 that we think might have had some kind of a chemical reaction. We found that pair of 1959s, the first year Lincoln Memorial, a 59 Philadelphia and Denver. And of course, we got that 1952 S wheat penny, our only wheat cent of the hunt. In our Canadian finds, we found a couple of interesting things here. A couple of those 1969s, the double nine, and this really interesting toner, that 1972 there. I just thought that was really cool looking. I got a collection of the nicest of the copper cents here, ranging from 75 all the way over to 82. So I just picked out the best of the best there. I'll roll them up with my nicer uncirculated or AU rolls. In terms of our older finds, we found a 55, a 56, a couple of really nice 57s, a couple of 58s, a 60. I think we got 3 1961s. Nope, 2. Yeah, 3. We got 4 1962s, a couple of 63s, and we got 6 1964s, and including that really nice one on the top there. And our oldest finds of the Canadian in the bunch, we got 3 King George VI, which always is a good thing to have happen. We got a 1943, a 1950, and a 1951. So again, this was a pretty fun hunt of Canadian pennies. I get a lot of people asking me how I get pennies. They're not circulating here, and there's no magic answer. I just ask. I go to the bank and I ask. And a lot of banks will say no, they're supposed to send these back to be melted down. And that is technically the truth. That's what they're supposed to be doing. What I've done is just ask and ask and ask and finally find a bank where they're okay to sell you pennies. And that's what I've been doing. And once I found a bank that would do that, I just keep going back and I keep asking and they keep giving me pennies. I'm assuming at some point in time, that might just stop. My luck might run out. But that's, I think, the only thing you can do is just go and ask. Just ask at as many places as you can until somebody says yes. And somebody eventually probably will. And you can hunt pennies too. So I really hope you've enjoyed this video of my penny hunt. And if you have, please give the video a like. Please subscribe to my channel, Cadroll Hunter. That would be great. I really appreciate when you come and watch my videos. I really like making them for you too. And I put out videos all the time. So we hope to see you again soon. Thanks so much for joining. Take care.